Now, on behalf of the golf and tourism industry, I have a two-part question for each of you. Earlier this year, the Virgin Valley Water District held an emergency board meeting where a few members of the board proposed a 400% tax rate increase on irrigation water for the Mesquite golf courses. During that meeting, comments were made by existing members that it was not the responsibility of the water district to subsidize the tourism industry in Mesquite. Question 1. Do you support the proposed 400% tax increase on irrigation water to the Mesquite golf courses? And the second part, do you believe the water district is subsidizing the tourism industry in Mesquite, which includes the golf courses and gaming?
Real quick, I hope I see all of you at the next Virgin Valley Water District Board of Directors meeting and the next OPD meeting. It is very refreshing to have all of you here. I very much support economic development in the valley. I think the Virgin Valley Water District does play a role in economic development. And when I moved to Mesquite in 2001, I was introduced to the concept of 3 Gs: golf, gambling, and grandpa. I have a responsibility as a board member to all 3 of those equally. I do believe that the golf course industry, currently the water lease rates at $2.50 a share, I think are artificially too low. I do not believe that we should raise them 400% to the same level that we can lease them to Southern Nevada Water Authority, because I think those rates are artificially too high. So I think there is common ground in between that. I do think that if you want to call it subsidy, please feel free to do that. I call it economic development for the good of all of us. If you live anywhere in Mesquite, whether you live on a golf course or you don't live on a golf course, you benefit from the green that the golf courses get from having reasonable rates for water. Again, reasonable rates. And I intend to do my best to make sure I serve all 3 Gs: grandpa, golf, and gambling.
I too thank you, all of you, for showing up. It's great to have community support. We get awful lonely at those water board meetings because nobody shows up. Naturally, we support the golf courses. Golf is Mesquite. That's our, that's where we come from, and that's probably our future also. I'm of the belief that we should have a market, and our price of our water should be market driven. I agree with Barbara that probably the funds, the money, water that we're sending to Southern Nevada Water Authority is not a real number, but $250 a share definitely is not a real number either. So I believe that at the end of 2017, we should let the market dictate the price of the water. Thank you.
I don't look at it as us subsidizing the golf industry or any other business. This is non-potable water, which so many people confuse with what you pay a certain rate for, that you drink, that you turn on your faucet for every day. If you want to call it subsidizing and paying their fair share, take a look at Pulte, for instance. They brought in and spent over $400 million, and they pay $26,000 to $27,000 a year just for potable water. The money that's spent to redevelop here at Wolf Creek has been thousands and thousands of dollars. They also spend $26,000, $27,000 a year. Trying to raise that by 400% is absolutely unthinkable. I wouldn't do it to any of you, and I certainly wouldn't do it to them. They are Mesquite. They not only take care of each of you, but they donate. They donate to every organization there is in this town. If we were to lose any of our golf courses, and all of a sudden you sat on somewhere brown, would that make you happy? Golf and gambling are tied together. It is industry. It's tourism. If we don't have tourism, we're not going to go anywhere. I believe that we should have reasonable rates that are fair to everyone. Thank you.
I guess I'm supposed to use this one. It's great to be here with you. It's interesting to hear the word subsidy. Sandra mentioned the $400 million investment of Pulte. Think about the tens of millions of all these other businesses. Every major residential community in Mesquite is built around a golf course. How many residents would we have if we didn't have the golf courses? And every one of those residences, every one of those homes means another ratepayer. Not only did they pay a huge impact fee, millions of dollars, which we actually used a lot of that impact fee to purchase the water shares that they're using. I question who's subsidizing who. I think the golf course industry and the gaming industry is subsidizing the water company, not vice versa. Do I support a tax increase on golf courses and industry? Not at all. I've had the benefit of serving, not only on the city council, but on the water district. And my record will show never have I supported a tax increase, especially on businesses, especially when there's irresponsible expenses that are creating this tax hike, not only on the businesses, but on each of us and our residences. There's a reason that Mesquite exists. I've been here, like I said, for over 30 years. We're here because we have gaming and because we have golf. You take those two things away from us and we have nothing. There's nothing left. All the kids that I get to rub shoulders with every day at school, they'd be gone too. Our community couldn't exist without them. Now, we have to make sure they're successful first if we're going to be successful as a community.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to be turning the questions, as we did the first time, back over to our media. And I believe we will be starting with Mr. Donahue.
Good evening, Barbara. Cliven Bundy is taking water from several streams feeding basins 222 and 223 to water his cattle. These basins are under VVWD jurisdiction. Nevada revised statutes says that the state engineer shall not issue a permit unless the applicant is legally entitled to place the livestock on the lands for which the permit is sought. If elected, will you support the Virgin Valley Water District asking the state engineer to enforce the statute to stop the rancher from using public water for those purposes?
Interestingly, I answered this question at the chamber luncheon today for the candidate forum they had, and here's what I said. I do believe that the board of directors at the Virgin Valley Water District should send a letter to Jason King, who is the state engineer. And it would go something like this. Mr. King, we have a serious issue, water rights issue in Gold Butte. We have, on paper, rights to up to 2,500 water shares for water resources located within Gold Butte, within a proposed National Conservation Area with wilderness designation, 2 bills which are in front of Congress. If those designations come about, or even a more strict national monument come about, we jeopardize our access to that water. We have many cases in which, once those designations were in place, they were never removed. It is extremely difficult to work with the BLM to get access to that area. Therefore, we jeopardize our water resources that could potentially feed 5,000 homes and associated businesses in the Mesquite and Virgin Valley. So, Mr. King, please do everything you can to help us keep from having those designations put in place. We need your help, we need your support. We need you to stand tall with us against the BLM and against those designations. And P.S., if you get a chance, check on Cliven's water. Thanks.
Barbara's correct. Part of our future is...
New question.
Darn, I had a good answer, too.
Keep it in mind, you might get that question later. Mr. Miller, in testimony, you've indicated you often didn't read or review background or research information that's provided to trustees prior to board meetings when you would vote on the issues. Do you still operate in that manner? And don't you think it's an important part of the responsibility of a trustee to provide real and competent personal oversight in the decisions-making process instead of just relying on staff?
I can tell right now, Mr. Williams, that you never sat in many meetings with Mr. Johnson. He was very difficult. Mr. Johnson is a hydrologist. Prior hydrologist that's under a criminal investigation, and the trial will be this January. And he had a way of changing words around that made it very confusing, and most of those items agendized, we had to make decisions at a spur of the moment. Of course, I think it's important to study the issues, and I pride myself in doing so.
Hello, Sandra. You have been on the board of the Virgin Valley Water District for a few years now, and during that time, the general manager, Ken Rock, who was highly regarded by many ratepayers, was abruptly fired by unexpected and unannounced action by 3 of the 5 water district trustees. You voted against that firing. What was your objection to that action?
My main objection to that action wasn't whether Mr. Rock had done a good job or a bad job. It was the fact that we did have a policy that we had been using for the last 2 years in evaluating the manager. By not using this policy and not doing this evaluation, he was not given the opportunity to listen to whatever problems the board or the staff thought that they had. I believe in policy. I believe in giving people the chance to answer if they've done something wrong or suspected of doing something wrong. But my biggest issue was the fact that it was suggested that we automatically fire this manager without giving him the chances to respond.
For Mr. Smith, you were on the VVWD board for 2 years in 2010 and 2012 and have some background in the issues facing the district, one of which is a big problem with deteriorating infrastructure because of deferred maintenance because funding was not provided. Can you shed some light on whether the board was aware of the need for the infrastructure maintenance and improvement, and if so, why wasn't it done? And a related question, do you believe a policy of extreme austerity is appropriate for a vital public utility?
There is definitely a budgeting problem happening down there right now. I think the distraction in other areas is so severe right now at the water district that we're not taking care of the primary function of the water district, which is to purvey water so we can turn on our sinks and flush our toilets. That's what we want them to do. That should have a priority always, that we make sure that the wells are operating properly, that there's always money there to take care of those items. And it seems like we're so distracted with other items that we're forgetting what the primary objective is for the water district's mere existence. I've sat on so many budgeting committees throughout my tenure on the city council. You have to be engaged constantly and look at every line item. You have to go through that and make sure that you have appropriate funds available. There's actually a really great crew of employees at the Virgin Valley Water District. They are amazing and would do an awesome job of providing water to us if we would just give them the opportunity and make sure that the funds are there for them to take care of us. Great men and women there to run that operation. And I feel like they've just been handcuffed over the last few years because of political correctness, because of the distractions, because of personal agendas that even revenge somehow to use the water district to take out this personal agenda in other areas. We shouldn't be spending $1 million in litigation fees when we don't have wells that operate.
Mrs. Ellistead, you've taken to this evening again, and I guess earlier today, and over the last couple of years, the position that the Virgin Valley Water District rights would be negatively affected if the Gold Feud area receives NCA designation. However, the very experienced general manager of the Virgin Valley Water District has reviewed the proposed legislation in detail and does not believe that there is any negative impact on the Virgin Valley Water District if the NCA designation is enacted, and that the wilderness designation area is well removed from the Virgin Valley District's water rights. Do you believe that you're more knowledgeable and have more expertise in water matters than the Virgin Valley Water District's general manager?
The easy answer is no, I don't believe I have more knowledge or experience than the general manager. However, I have spent the last 2 years, 3 years, looking at those issues associated with our water rights in Gold Butte. I have read Mr. Horsford's piece of legislation that is pending in Congress. I have read Senator Reed's pending legislation. And while Congressman Horsford's does allow some access to that area for current structures or existing water structures, it does not offer any access to that area for future construction of water resources. Senator Reed's legislation makes absolutely no reference to that area. I do believe the general manager is concerned a little bit about the BLM making sure that we grade the Canyon Road to those areas right now, because if we don't, then we are reneging on our agreement with BLM, and that is a door that they can open to take access away from us. I stand by, I always will stand by the articles that I wrote in the Mesquite Citizen Journal that you can go in and search, you can read yourself. I stand by the research I did. If you think it's so easy to get into those designated areas, go visit Tombstone, Arizona. They're still trying to get back into their area and get access to their resources. And it's less than half a mile from our resources to the border of the wilderness area.
Hey, Ted. You were elected as one of the 3 Virgin Valley Water District representatives for the city of Mesquite, but you have consistently voted with the 2 Bunkerville representatives on matters of significant importance and against supporting local Mesquite businesses with excess VVWD water resources. Do you believe it is, in the long term, best interest of Mesquite to send its water resources down the river to Las Vegas instead of using it to strengthen the Mesquite economy?
Thank you for that interesting question. I'm trying to remember one time that I voted against businesses here in Mesquite. I don't recall one. back to leasing water to Southern Nevada Water Authority. We've got 17 shares, and we're leasing them to Southern Nevada Water Authority for $12.50 a share. Does anybody see anything wrong with that? I mean, the water district is saddled with a $30 million debt. 30% of our budget is debt, and we're very much handicapped. And somebody over here said something about that's the reason we can't keep our infrastructure going, is because we don't designate enough money. When you take 30% off the top, it cuts a lot out. I guess I voted with those guys in Bunkerville. They must be really bright guys. That's all the thing I think of.
Sandra, we recently became aware that Virgin Valley Water District does not have backup power for generators for its wells and treatment plants. In the event of a prolonged power outage, we could also run out of water in the system, and water may not, or also not be properly treated for removal of contaminants. Would you support including the cost for adequate backup power in the next budget?
Most
Definitely.
Most definitely. I was surprised to find out that we didn't have the backup generators. I've been surprised to find out several different things that we don't have in place that I thought that we did. Backup generators are so important. If we didn't have the generator to produce the water, to get it out to the homes and to people, what will we all do? This last short time without power, without water, our wells dropped. We didn't have the backup. Fortunately, it was short term. It's a sad situation. We definitely need to budget to have backup generators and other things that we need. It has to be done by budget. Budget can't be done without policy. Policy tells you what you need to do and how you can go about making your budget. And you take it line by line. We've had a lot of incidents that have come up that have been unexpected, but that doesn't give us an excuse for not having the ability to provide the service that we should.
Mr. Smith, good evening. In the past, you have served on the Mesquite City Council for 6 years, and been the Mesquite representative on the Virgin Valley Water District when we were still appointing them for 2 years. With that experience, why do you think the infrastructure has been allowed to deteriorate so severely, and what changes would you propose to make the Board of Trustees more effective?
Making the board more effective, I think that was one of the major frustrations in the 2 years that I served on the board. It was an interesting experience for me, having served on other boards in Las Vegas and the Mesquite City Council. The infrastructure we've obviously ignored it for a long time. Part of the issue that we have is the wells and the location of the wells are extremely deep. Some exceed 1,000 feet, that we're trying to pump water and they get infiltrated with sand and other debris, and we end up burning up pumps and tearing up casings. We're not going to be able to change our well locations in the next 2 or 3 years. It's not going to happen. That's a very expensive project, and things like backup generators are obviously going to come into play long before that. But just regular maintenance, just making sure that we do everything we can. It's an expensive, I think it's about $250,000 every time a well goes down. If I remember right in that figure, it's very expensive to start repairing that. I know with the city and other organizations, they make allotments for those types of things. I just feel like we've, again, been so distracted, and some of it might just be all the other expenses that have surprised them, but I can't help but look at some of the fees we've given to attorneys, in-house attorneys, and other expenses that we've accrued that maybe should have been on the back burner long before the infrastructure. I personally would like to continue to get water at my faucet first before we go ahead and spend money in other areas. So I think we just need to put that as a higher priority and make sure those things are budgeted first.
Thank you.
Barb, you are running to represent the city of Mesquite on the water board. Do you believe that Mesquite and other Virgin Valley businesses, such as golf courses, large developments, and casinos and hotels, that are the absolute backbone of Mesquite's economy, should be required to compete with Las Vegas businesses for water owned by the Virgin Valley Water District?
First of all, I want to make sure everyone understands that the last thing I would ever vote to do is to sell any water share that the Virgin Valley Water District owns. I will never say yes to selling our water rights. However, as Mr. Miller alluded earlier, the Virgin Valley Water District is leasing water shares to Southern Nevada Water Authority. Right now, they're leasing 17 shares that are unused by any other business or entity in this valley. Those are 17 shares that everybody else up here in this valley has said, ooh, we don't need those, or we don't want those, for whatever reason. So we are not sending our water downriver at the expense of the businesses or entities in this valley, and I would never agree to that. But we are not doing it. I want to make sure everybody understands that. Those 17 shares that we're leasing to Southern Nevada Water Authority are 17 shares that everyone else here has said they can't use. They are irrigation shares. Irrigation water. You couldn't drink that water. You could hardly even use it on your yard. It's that bad. So it is not drinking water. It is not potable water. It is not water that any other business in this valley wants right now. So yes, send it downriver to Southern Nevada Water Authority if they so want it, and they desperately do. It's valuable water.
Ted, you have testified that you were asked to run for the VVWD board in 2006 by Bo Bingham. This was several years before Mr. Bingham was supported by you to be chosen to replace the previous water district attorney. When he asked you to run, did you ask him why he, as a private attorney with no formal association with the water district, was recruiting trustees? And did he share any insights about what he thought you should do if you were elected?
Thank you, Mike. I wasn't aware that Mr. Bingham asked me to run for the water board. When I see him, I'll ask him about that again.
So your testimony was
I don't know what testimony you're talking about.
during a deposition?
Well,
Mayor? Let's get back to the question.
I'm not supposed to follow.
Yeah, no follow-up to the question.
I'd like to say something about Bubba, who seems to be picking on Mr. Bingham.
No, wait, no.
I'm not.
It's strictly answer the question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway, Mr. Bingham has brought in about $7 million, and we're taking in $6 million a year and spending $7 million. And in case you're not good with math, that's not a good deal.
Mrs. Frederick. 3 members of the Board of Trustees. This is a similar question to what you already received, so we didn't coordinate that well. We asked our own questions. 3 members of the board abruptly fired the former general manager, Ken Rock. You were one of the 2 Mesquite trustees that voted against that firing. I know you said that you had an issue with the manner and the process that was filed. My question is a little different. as a trustee with knowledge of how the operations of the Virgin Valley Water District were proceeding, had you seen any problems with the management of Ken Rock that warranted such an abrupt and rash decision without any previous discussion with board members or legal counsel? And do you think his termination was justified?
No.
Excuse me, if you have a question of one of the candidates, can you please hold it till the meeting is over with? Thank you.
I did not see or have knowledge myself that there was anything questionable about the job that Mr. Rock was doing for us. Mr. Rock had a futuristic way about himself that presented issues to some people because he did look to the future. He wasn't just looking at here and now. He was trying to see what we were going to need and how to get there. I didn't have any issues brought to me by any employees or by members of the city. I thought that he did an excellent job. I did not think that it was fair that he should be fired. I honestly believe he was doing a good job, and he really cares and cared about Mesquite and the businesses and the industry and the golf and the gaming and everything about them. And he wanted things to progress so that we would be in a better place as time went on.
Mr. Smith, the Virgin Valley Water District has been criticized over the past many years of several board members that have had conflicts of interest because of their personal water holding and dealings. Do you or your family have any significant ownership of water, rights, or other assets that could taint your independence?
The simple answer is no. I don't own any water shares. But the question is what is important, and the fact that indeed we've had people on our board that have not just some water shares, but a huge amount of water shares. And that's where this question about sending water down to Las Vegas becomes critical, because they need that price to stay up. They need that price to be as high as they can possibly keep it. We're being asked to compete with Las Vegas. Las Vegas, Barb's absolutely correct. They don't use the Virgin River water. They don't drink it. When I first moved here, I was told it's too thick to plow, and too thick to drink and too thin to plow. So they're obviously not using that water. They're drawing water out of the Colorado River. 97% of all the water that Las Vegas uses comes from the Colorado River. 90% of all their drinking water comes from the Colorado River. They're using those shares, and they're pre-29 shares, so they can divert water from the Colorado. They get to use those as credits and then treat Colorado River water as potable. It would cost, the estimates is over $2,000 per acre foot to treat what we have out here in our river. They're spending 53 cents to treat the Colorado River. They give up to $1,200. At one time over $2,000. They're grossing on that acre foot that they're paying for that water share over $9,000. It's big business for them, and we're asked to compete with that. We're not drinking it. We're putting it on grass. We're not drinking that water or treating it.
That concludes the questions in this portion this evening.